Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. I still have not found my light. Oh, wait. Maybe I do. No? No? Yeah, so I still don't know where my ring light is. How is everybody? I lost it and I still do not know where it is. Hold on, I gotta heat up my coffee. Hey guys, how's everybody doing? Everyone tell me how you're doing, where you guys are coming from. I'm sure that you saw on my little live notification that activist and independent journalist Zeynab Day is going to be joining us in 10 minutes. So I'm excited about that. I just thought randomly I had subscribed. Yes. Good. Thank you. Glad you're here. Happy to be here. Happy birthday, Brandon. So, how's everybody's day going? Are you serious? I was at the dentist today too. I think I told you guys that in Discord. I don't know if you guys saw it because there's a separate channel for announcements in Discord, but it doesn't seem to ever get seen unless I put it in the general channel. So I was at the dentist today too to have my other crown put back on. Oh my gosh. So I was there for a while and like I'm just really hoping, so put out the good vibes for me, that this crown stays, right? I had 2 temporary crowns that fell off. The first temporary crown that I had put on before the wedding fell off at the wedding. Then they put a second temporary crown on. They're like, this one won't fall off. Don't worry. We're using a stronger cement. Don't worry. This temporary crown won't fall off. Because I had to have a temporary while I was waiting for the like regular crown or whatever, the permanent crown. And so then the fucking second temporary crown fell off, like for real, within hours of having it put on. Within hours of having it put on, right? So it's been a disaster, folks. It's just been a very stressful disaster. So today I went back to have the permanent crown put on, and I am hoping that this is the last time as far as this particular crown, right? That this is the last time as far as this particular crown goes that I have to have put on. But then get this shit. Do you guys remember is another no, today was the permanent crown, but I had 2 temporary crowns that fell off. But okay, do you guys remember last week, those of you who are in chat last week in the live, that I was complaining about my dog having farts? Like my dog was having like really bad farts and I was like, ugh, that's terrible. Well, for those of you who do remember it, after that happened, my dog got really sick and just started having diarrhea. Like crazy diarrhea. Like it was, yes, exactly. Smelly, eggy. He started having diarrhea. So then I'm like, oh, cool story. So this is what I mean when I just say, like, sometimes I'm just like so stressed out about like this shit. So he starts having diarrhea. He diarrheas all over my bed, all over our stuff, all over the floor. I get a like over-the-counter anti-diarrheal. It doesn't work. He's still having diarrhea. I have to take him to the vet yesterday. $500 to take him to the vet yesterday and get this antibiotic that I got for him. This, what is this? Metronidazole. I don't know. Get that for him and this probiotic because they don't know. And so then I had to do that, and it was so stressful. So I'm like stressing about my tooth. I'm stressing about my tooth. I'm stressing about my tooth. And then this happens, and I've got to take Iggy to the vet. And then when I come back, my other dog is having diarrhea too. I'm like, but I'm not taking him to the vet. I'm just going to give them the same medication. But they were like, oh, we could do a bunch of tests to figure out maybe what's the underlying issue. And I'm like, but like, just give me the antibiotics. You know what I mean? Because the thing is too, is that like what's so weird is that we were only gone for a day. Like I asked our dog sitter if they got into anything. She said that they didn't get into anything. We were only gone for a day. Yes, I know. This is kind of the problem. This I do. I do. I spend so much time thinking about my boys. My sister had made a joke to me being like, "Oh, if my dogs cost that much money, I would just like sell them." I'm like, "No, cuz people don't understand. Like these are our family members. They are my kids. Like I'm not going to just be like, "Oh, whatever. Hey, soul." So let me grab my coffee and then Zeynab is going to join us despite the fact that I can't find my ring light. Uh, you know what? Not that it needs to look like professional. Like, those of you guys who are in this community with me, I don't think that you're under any pretense that this is a professional setup here. This is just kind of like my stream. I don't think you guys are expecting me to have like some kind of professional setup. So, there's that. Let me make sure that I'm keeping expectations low. I've been honestly stressed out today because I've been getting screeched at all day by Blue MAGA. Because I made a video and I posted it on YouTube. So those of you who just follow me on YouTube, like should have already seen it maybe. But I've been getting screeched at all day by Blue MAGA because I criticized Cory Booker's marathon speech. And Blue MAGA is really upset. They were very triggered. And of course, now they're all in my comments crying, being like, "What are you doing? Okay, what are you doing?" And then, of course, I've got people in my comments now saying that I'm only criticizing Cory Booker because he's a black man. And of course, like, I don't know. That's to me like, I honestly don't really have, especially since we're living in such a hellscape at the moment. I really don't have a lot of patience for people who use Zionist tactics to try to silence criticism. Like just being like, "Oh no, we can't criticize politicians. And if you criticize Cory Booker, it means that you're just doing so because he's black," ignoring all the criticisms that we always have of every other Democrat. And it's just honestly, it's tired. It's really tired. Like I'm so exhausted by Blue MAGA using these tactics that like using the same tactics as Zionists do in order to try to get out of having criticisms and holding politicians accountable. Like it's just really tired. Oh no. Yeah. So anyway, the whole dentist thing is like genuinely traumatizing, especially since this is the third time that I've had to go back for that particular crown. For this one particular crown, this is the third time that I've had to go back in a week. Third time in a week. Third time in a week that I've had to go back for this damn crown. And then on top of that, I didn't even tell you guys too. I had a very traumatic consultation at the endodontist about my front tooth needing an implant. I had to go there to get a consultation about my implant. And I had to have a 3D scan, like a 3D CAT scan, x-ray on my front teeth. That was very stressful because he said that he didn't know that if I would even have enough bone to anchor an implant to. It was very upsetting and scary. Like to have somebody tell me that, like, I don't even know if you have enough bone to like anchor an implant to. I was like, what? What does that even mean? And then on top of that, they're like, "Oh, and then you're going to have your wisdom teeth pulled, and you're also going to have to see a consult and ortho to make sure that this tooth that's getting pushed back isn't going to be affected by the implant." The whole thing is just a disaster, folks. The whole thing is just a disaster. But I keep seeing people being like, "Okay, go to Mexico," because I need so much work done that they're like, "Go to Mexico." And as much as I would love to do that, like I would love to go to Mexico and get cheaper dental care. But I don't think that you can do that when you have this much like time that needs to pass, because with a implant, it's not like a one-stop shop. You know what I mean? Like you can go there and just have the implant like done and then go home. If you're getting an implant done, you have to have it like prep first. you have to have the, like, it cleaned, you have to have like a post put in, then you have to wait 3 months to go back to have the final crown put on. So it's like a multi-step process. If you're going to Mexico for dental work, I'd imagine you're going there as like a one-stop shop. You go there, you get it all done in like a week, and then you leave. I don't think you can do that with like if you're going to Mexico. Anyway, would you cease and desist? Okay. So my guest is here, and I'm excited, you guys, because this is going to be the first time I've ever had a guest on this stream. Okay. Which is Zeynab Day. I do want to be corrected if I'm saying her name wrong. And she is a journalist, an independent journalist, and an activist who, stop biting me, who, I told you guys, this is not a professional situation here. Who has been an organizer for Medicare for All, for abolishing ICE. She helped write the Green New Deal. She's advised dozens of non-establishment races. So she's been in this for a minute. Like, this is not her first rodeo. So she's worked on a lot of these things. I'm excited to talk to her just about like what she thinks strategy-wise, what she thinks about the current state of the Democratic Party, especially because she has been there. You know, she's not Johnny come lately. She's also not, you know, somebody who doesn't know like what the ins and outs are of this kind of stuff. So this is going to be fun. I'm excited. She's going to be my first guest. I told you guys I was going to try to like start having like guests on and for like informal, you know, talks or whatever. So yes, there is a least. So help me welcome Zeynab. Please tell me how to say your name correctly, because I feel like I'm saying it wrong.
That works. It's Zeynab. Zayna. You can actually call me Zayna for short if you want.
Zeynab. But how you pronounce it is Zeynab?
Zeynab.
Zeynab or Zeynab?
Zeynab.
Zeynab. Okay. I knew I was saying it wrong. I was like, I know I'm saying this wrong.
It's close. I'm like, okay, if it's close enough.
Well, thank you. Thank you for coming on. I'm excited. I was just telling chat that I was excited to finally have somebody on that you were willing to come on and chat. This is obviously very informal, but I think it's really important that we have these conversations. Yeah. So
I'm cool with informal. If my dogs bark, I apologize. You know, they get all, it's been storming and they're all like,
yeah. Well, I'm kind of hoping that I've desensitized my community and chat to be okay with the fact that things are not only informal, but it gets a little crazy. You know, my dogs will just start jumping on me and barking, and I've got to, like, you know, whatever. When you have pets, it's what you have to do. You just have to roll with it. So yeah. So I was telling chat that one of the things that I did want to start doing was just having people on to talk, you know, like in an informal way, but like anyone, whether that be like politicians, not that I'm saying that a politician would, journalists, activists. So you are actually the perfect person to have as a first-time guest, because you are both an independent journalist and an activist who has experience working in this space. And I was just telling them too that I was in fights all earlier today with Blue MAGA, because they are very triggered and upset in my comments, especially on TikTok, that I criticize Cory Booker's speech. So
they do that. They want to be able to go back to brunch. They're like, but a performative thing happened. We can go back to brunch now. Everything's cool, you know, like
totally.
Fascism defeated. We're good to go.
So yeah, so I want to start with just hearing for you to tell chat a little bit about what you told me, like what your background is, what you do, and how you are involved in organizing, and just kind of like your experience.
Yeah. And hey guys, I see some folks here I know. That's cool. I used to work at a place called, well, I went to school for like journalism and public relations. I wanted to do, I don't know. I was thinking about doing First Amendment litigation for internet law, but I'm poor as shit. And I am from Appalachia, generational poverty. I got into Yale, but could not go as a single mom. How the hell would I pay? I don't even know. My professors sent in a letter to get me an application there without me asking them to. It was sweet, but I couldn't. There's no way I could go. So I was like, well, I just took my degree and I started applying places, and I volunteered at this place called Brand New Congress. I'd kind of been thinking about something where we could run a whole bunch of people, like a whole slate of candidates, I wanted to do independence because I didn't support either party. I thought that they were both corrupt as hell. I was tired of the establishment, and I found someone that was already doing something like that. And I was like, cool. So I volunteered there, and then I was brought on shortly after I volunteered as director of communications. At the time, Brand New Congress was partnered with Justice Democrats. So I became press director of Justice Democrats and Brand New Congress. Later became communications director of Brand New Congress. The PACs kind of split. Justice Democrats went off their own way, and they were like, we're going to reform the Democratic Party. The people that stayed behind at Brand New Congress was like, you know, we still want to do independence. We want to recruit candidates. We don't just want to endorse. Is what we were doing at the time. The whole plan was have the communities, no one could put in their own nomination to run. Their community had to nominate them. And then we would make phone calls to these people that the community nominated, typically like community organizers and stuff like that. That's how it started. And it was awesome. Like, we were recruiting people to run that had never ran for office before, which I found out later that AOC, even though she hadn't ran for office, she wanted to run. She wanted to be in politics. She was different than the others. And that they were, some of the founders of Justice Democrats had kind of went on and stayed with Justice Dems and sort of focused on that, wanted her as like their bellwether or whatever. And the rest of this was all just to lift her up so that she would win, because she only needed 15,000 votes to win in her district because no one ever showed up to vote. So it was easy to unseat Crowley. But at BNC, we truly believed in what we were doing. And the candidates, we didn't know about that whole thing until, I didn't know about it till a year and a half, 2 years after I was already working at Brand New Congress. We had launched the Medicare for All campaign. Like, I was at the very first ever Medicare for All rally, helped organize it with John Conyers and Ro Khanna at the time. And I remember it was the same day that John McCain made his big, like, you know, vote, and we went to this Move On rally afterwards with signs that said Medicare for All, and the blue MAGA were like spitting like spitballs at us and like yelling and screaming at us that we were going to ruin and dismantle the ACA because we were asking for Medicare for All. It was the craziest shit ever. But that's, you know, I started learning my lessons really early, especially not being a Democrat or a Republican, how the party cultism works and sort of how the machine works. And what I learned really early on is there's a caste system, which I already kind of knew. But there's a caste system even in progressive politics or like leftist politics, that it's still the same. You know, people that I worked with, board members and stuff at BNC, would still be like, oh, but this volunteer's from an Ivy League school, we should bring them on. And I was like, what's the damn difference between that and the person that graduated from the state school, or the person that's just trying to get in and get experience? You know, that class element was still there, and generational poverty was still, I don't know, people were still looked down upon for, there was still a lack of class consciousness, even in those circles, you know. And there was a lot of performative like bullshit, you know, but when it came to real policies, sometimes that would get missing to the performative stuff, especially internally. And that was a lesson that I keep seeing over and over and over again.
On that a little bit more, like what your experience was with kind of seeing that and how that relates to what you're seeing now.
Can I? On your screen? Or, okay, I wasn't sure if you were afraid to get like.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get in trouble, but I think I see Kyle Kalinske doing it all the time. I don't think
Kyle smokes all the time. I don't think, I don't think so. But I was just making sure. But there is so at Brand New Congress, I started kind of pushing for it. I'd realized that they had brought on an executive director, and he was working like 5 to 7 hours a week, and I was working 90 hours per week, literally. And I was basically running everything. And my family was like, okay, Zeynab, you were the only staff member before they brought him on, and they brought him on. He has a contract and you don't. And you're working all these hours and he's never working. And so, like, I also realized that the person I brought on as like assistant to work with me, he was getting paid like $1,200 a month. And he was Black. And then our Latina person that we brought on wasn't getting paid very much. And I was like, okay, we've brought fundraising up. I've helped to bring fundraising up to $40,000 a month, which is significant. We only started out at like 6,000, 5,000. And I brought it up to that. I was like, we can pay people more. And I'm not necessarily asking for more, but I want a contract and I want like to be treated the same way he's being treated. He's never here. You know, I'm doing all the kind of stuff right now. And it just seemed fair. And I was like, I don't understand. We're supposed to have like these values. And what ended up happening is we all ended up getting pushed out of the organization. After Biden won, the organization went from being radical, you know, supporting these candidates, recruiting these candidates to run, training them to run, you know, regular working people, to then looking at how much people make. Can they afford to run? How much have they fundraised already? Are these viable candidates? You know, and will they fundraise for us? And I was like, I don't like where we're going here. I was like, what are you doing? And they became more moderate. You know, we were radical. And I was like, okay, if you guys are going to become more moderate, I was like, one, I don't support that at all. It's not why I joined this shit. Second, you probably need to tell the people that are donating to us that you're changing your entire freaking value system. Like, maybe make some kind of announcement. If this is what you're going to be doing and they're giving money to us, you should probably tell them. And then they wanted to endorse John Fetterman. And I was like, that dude tried to shoot a Black guy in his neighborhood. He's endorsed by AIPAC. Are you freaking kidding me? I was like, hell no, I would vote no. And they were like, well, he's such a big campaign. He could fundraise. So I was like, no. I was also like, we should probably get AOC off our docket. I know we got her elected. I know that we ran her and we're the reason she won, but she just, you know, last year she gave all this money to incumbents that our candidates were running against. She softly endorsed candidates that our candidates were running against, people like Eva Pitsoa was running against. And I was like, you know, she's broken her promises. She signed an oath when she started that she would support the slate. She would continue to support Medicare for all, abolish ICE, all these policies, that she would never take money or give money to corporate Democrats, period. And I was like, so if we don't hold these candidates accountable, when they become representatives, what's the damn point of our organization?
Right.
And I guess that was too controversial. And they were like, we're moving in a different direction. After 4.5 years of me building the place, they were like, we're moving in a different direction. So we're going to have to let you go. I was like, can you sign this non-disclosure order? And I was like, are you freaking kidding me? No. And they're like, well, sorry, we can't give you a severance. Then I was like, how far we have fallen.
That's crazy. This is brand new Congress you're talking about, right? Not Justice Democrats.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was sad when you pour your heart and soul into something and you build it and you spend that much time building it. And sometimes I was the only staff member there.
Wow. Well, I don't even remember. I didn't even know brand new Congress was still a thing because they've done nothing.
Oh, no, they dissolved about 9 months to a year after I left. They went from raising $40,000 a month down to like 4,000, 5,000 after I left.
Wow.
They didn't know how to, like, they let me go and they couldn't figure out how to get into all the systems. They didn't. I was like, because I don't know how to explain it. It's like, have you ever worked at a corporate job where the corporate boss thinks that they know everything that you do and that you're just easily replaced and that they can just come in and like do your job. I worked in restaurants for 15 years and it was like that, you know, and then they get behind the cook line and they can't flip a frickin' burger.
Yeah. No, that I feel like that's most jobs. Like most jobs, like the workers are underappreciated. They do most of the work. The people that are in like middle management think that like they can do the job better and that you're just kind of like a cog. And but the problem is when you're doing that in a place that relies on fundraising and for somebody to like really know what they're doing, it kind of falls apart. I remember being like, yeah, whatever happened to them, whatever happened to Justice Democrats.
It's sad, man. I knew Justice Democrats was going to go down the toilet because they started endorsing these corporate candidates, you know, and their slate didn't have any values pinned to their slate. You know what I mean? It was just loosey goosey kind of.
Yeah, that's
and
I was more familiar with them because it's so funny that you say the thing about people having to like try to get people to run, because my husband was actually trying to get me to like be part of Justice Democrats, like try to run with them. And I was like, I don't think that you could do that because you're married to me. Like, I don't think, or not, we were married yet, but I was like, I don't think you can try to like get me to be drafted by them. But as I remember thinking at the time, even if somebody had, they would not have liked somebody like me. But when I
may have, you never know.
when I was done with their asses was when they endorsed and defended Near Tandon getting because I followed basically what you were on is the inside, I was on the outside, and really excited about them. I was really excited about Brand New Congress. I was really excited about Justice Democrats. I was donating to them. Like, it was crazy. I was so excited when AOC got elected and like all the other Justice Democrats got elected. And then, of course, as we all started to see them kind of fall apart and just make compromises and this and that, it was like I was already like losing faith in them. And then when the whole Near Tandon thing happened, I was like, I'm done with these clowns. Like, I'm done. I'm not going to give them money ever again. Like, this is a joke. This is a joke. Like, you're really endorsing Near Tandon? Seriously?
Right.
Somebody who hates everything about what the left is. Like, what? I know. They always say, you don't understand like the inside game or like whatever, but it's like the inside game is the fucking problem so much of the time. Like, that's the fucking problem so much of the time. That doesn't mean that I would say that you never, ever work with, if you're choosing to work within the electoral system, that doesn't mean that I'm saying that you never work with the Democratic Party, that you never work with the Republican, or never work within the system if you are choosing to run people within the system that exists. That's not what I'm saying. And I feel like it's a straw man that a lot of like blue MAGA use. Oh, you're just saying that like they should never work within the system and that you should just basically be like a bomb thrower that never gets anything done. No, that's not what I'm saying. But you don't capitulate on core values, especially before there's even a negotiation. Like, it's just like, oh no, we're keeping our powder dry. What powder? Like, and for what?
What's the point of a slate if you're not going to have some basic ass principles?
Right. Or show any fight at all. Any fight at all. There was never even like, again, I understand that sometimes you need to make compromises and sometimes you need to sit things out when it comes to the way that you're negotiating in Congress. Like, I get that. But I never once even saw them try. Like, not even try, which is the reason why you hear a lot of people who defend AOC bring up the Nancy Pelosi protest, because it was the only thing she ever did. She never actually did anything within Congress with the squad to protest anything or to be a thorn in the side of anyone once she was there. So
I was so angry because like I helped coach her to get her there. So like,
yeah, that's
some of the candidates that I have, like I would do coaching sessions with them and this sounds crazy. I'm just going to say it. I've said it a few times before, but I always sound like a crazy person because people don't believe me unless they were there. But when I coach people, like I would say things and then I would get them to say what I'm saying, or not to say what I'm saying, but to put it in their own words, like just to get out what their values are, what their experiences are. she would write down exactly what I would say, mimic my hand movements, my gestures, everything. And I was like, no, 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 you're not supposed to. You're not supposed to be an actress acting as me. You're supposed to take this and be yourself. You know what I mean? Like, that's the best way that I can explain it. And it was odd. And to me, everyone else, I loved a lot of our candidates. I really did. Anthony Clark was freaking amazing. Paula Jean Swearingen, and I'm biased. She's my closest friend, so I am biased about that, but she's also amazing. There were so many candidates that were awesome. With AOC, I had this weird gut feeling about her because she treated her volunteers and people like staff. I don't know how to explain it. It was different with her, and she had a different kind of drive, but it wasn't a kind of drive like toward the policies in the same kind of way, that same kind of connection. It was more of a drive just to get elected. The night that she won, I was outside writing her press release in an alley, right, behind the office, or behind where that party was, the one where she was like, and stood up and she was like, I'm going to bring the ruckus or whatever. And I was writing her press releases and getting them out. And I cried, but I didn't cry because I was happy that she won. I cried because I thought, if this is the only person that runs, our movement is going to tank. If she sells out, that's it. That's it. We're done. And I called Paula Jean and we cried together the next day. And we cried because she had been the only person that won so far. And because we knew that all of this work we had done and everything kind of rest on the laurels of Alex, of everyone. Mm. And she was one of the few people I thought might sell out and I had questions about. I thought she was an opportunist, and I didn't really want to say that out loud back then because I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt, and I didn't trust my gut as much back then as I do now, that I should have.
Yeah. And I understand wanting to give people the benefit of the doubt. I've wanted to give people the benefit, and I don't think it's a bad trait. You don't want to be bitter and like always like suspicious all the time. I think there's a good balance between like trusting your gut, but also like, sometimes it's good to give people the benefit of the doubt. I feel like I gave her the benefit of the doubt way longer than I should have. Like it was like, I think maybe I was in denial because I really wanted to believe that like she was going to eventually do the right thing. So even when a lot of people were finally like, she is full of shit, like she's selling out, or she's, she never believed in it, I was like, well, you gotta maybe, and well, hopefully, like, but I think that, and I get like people want to believe, and also like I said, it's good sometimes I think to give people the benefit of the doubt, but then it was like, and it wasn't just her, I feel like a lot of people do focus on AOC, but it wasn't just her. It was like, I didn't see any of them doing anything. I didn't see any of them fighting back or standing up. And I started to feel like, I started to realize over time, it was clear to me that AOC cared more about moving up in the Democratic Party and preserving her career than anything else.
Yeah. And I was really happy when Corey won because I love Corey, but she too, though, like, I think that there's like a gatekeeping, like she won, but she's also more of a political fit. I don't know how to explain it. Like her father, and she was an activist too, but her father was in politics. So she was kind of politically seasoned. And I remember she showed up at the, like Paula Jean and I messaged her and we called her and we told her we're going to the March for Medicare for All. Will you come? She came mostly to see us, but I remember people were, like accosting her over Force the Vote. And at that time, I kind of felt bad because I think she genuinely showed up to support the rally, and people were like so mad at her over Force the Vote, which I was upset over Force the Vote. But the thing about Force the Vote is it wasn't the first time it was done. Jimmy Dore and them got the idea because brand new Congress did it in 2018, and we did it successfully because we started our campaign in November, right after the election, and we had a person that we were going to replace the speaker with, Barbara Lee. And so we pitched her for like 3 months and then got concessions because Barbara Lee, you know, people were like, shit, she might actually beat Pelosi out. And so it was more successful than Force the Vote, which started in January, like a month right before, or not even a month, 3 weeks before, you know, Pelosi, or before the vote. It makes it a little bit harder. And I still supported it, though. I still supported Force the Vote. But at the same time, like, they were giving Corey a really hard time because she had a hard time with the whole Force the Vote thing, which I kind of understood both sides of that. But I remember they kept coming up to her, just yelling at her. And she grabbed my arm, you know, and I was standing there, and I stood there with her for a while. And then she left that in tears, actually, later. So I think that sort of had a effect. And then a little bit later, she had her whole housing thing on the stair of the Capitol building. And I went up there and I saw her up there and I talked to her for a little bit. I didn't know she was distant with me. Noticed she was distant with me, and I'd known her for 5 years. I mean, you know, I used to be her coach, you know, her like one of her press coaches. So I thought that was a little strange, and you just kind of lose people. And I think that part of the thing that happens when they get into Congress, they get surrounded by and not the case with AOC, but I think with some of them, they get surrounded by all these advisors. And this is something Rashida told me once. You get surrounded by all these advisors and they'll tell you things like, you know, it's for the greater good if you go along with this or that. And this is how it works on the inside. And then, you know, they chip away at them after a while, and it takes a real resolve. And I will say Rashida is one of the few people I've ever seen to have that. I sat on a call with her where the Dem party was like, I can't remember. There was someone from the DCCC who was like pressuring her about, I think, giving like $250,000 to the DCCC, and she told them to go F themselves, basically. I was like, hell yeah. This was after she was elected, but she was, I will say, was one of the people that I think is actually authentic. And I won't say that about very many people up there. I think Corey wanted to be authentic, but once she got up there, it was, she got sucked into it. And then once she was beat out by AIPAC, I saw her fire come back, but it was like her fire went away too. It was like part of her dissolved or something. It was really strange to watch.
Yeah, I often wonder what really happens behind the scenes there. Do they, is there like a soul sucking ritual that happens when people go into Congress? Like, because it's like they go in one way and then they come out another way, and you're like, what's going on? Like, what is going on? Is like Jeffrey Epstein there, and he's like meeting with them and I'm like, what happens to these people?
I saw it with some candidates too. Well, I saw it with some candidates too. When people get this notoriety, it changes them. Like, I saw people kind of shift into like narcissistic behavior, and I would always tell them, we don't want heroes. We need fucking bullhorns. We need bullhorns, not heroes. We don't need celebrities. You're not going up there to be celebrities. You're not a savior. You are supposed to be representing the people. And sometimes, you know, I saw people change with that. I saw their personalities.
That frustrates me, because then when it comes to that, it's like, that's why it's really important who you surround yourself with. Because if we know, that should be a priority of people getting elected, because if we know that the incentive structure is really bad in DC, and we know that there's all these swamp creatures, and we know that people are only human, and even if they go with the best of intentions, they're outnumbered, and they're going to be surrounded by all these cretins and all these lobbyists that, like, I would think that there would be an emphasis on making sure that there is a good team around people, because to kind of, I guess, defend the politicians for a second, they're only human. And you can only be surrounded by that kind of pressure for so long before you kind of like cave and start to change. So it's like, why isn't there an emphasis then on having a strong core team around these
Yeah.
people? Keep them in check and to keep their humanity, basically, and to remind them. It's like, I remember when AOC first went in, what was it, a month before like 3 of her staffers were fired? Like 3 of the people that had gone in with her were like ousted. And I'm like, why? And to be replaced by who? A bunch of DC creeps?
Yeah, they were replaced by a bunch of DC creeps. And, it was like Corbyn and Shoycott. I kind of laughed a little bit because they were being a little grifty too. But at the same time, I was like, well, this sucks. But I remember there was this protest when we were doing the whole abolish ICE push. There was a protest at a migrant detention center that Anthony Clark, Amy Villela, and Cori Bush were going to. And I think 2 of them may have gotten arrested there, if I'm remembering correctly. Alex was supposed to go. And I get these pictures in, and I refuse to run them at BNC. I never did run those damn pictures. But she's standing by a fence, like wearing white, and she's like crying. And they were fake. And I was like, you were supposed to go to this. And they're like, well, she's going to be on, I can't remember what it was. I think Stephen Colbert tonight. And so she can't go to the protest. And I'm like, well, that's some bullshit. Like, the protest is where she needs to be. What are you talking about? She's going on Stephen Colbert. Tell him to schedule it again. Right. Like, she's famous all of a sudden. Reschedule it with him. She needs to be at the protest. And yeah, I didn't like that. That was a big red flag for me, getting those pictures. I was like, this isn't settling in right. And then they were like, well, we don't need you to help with press anymore. And I was like, yeah,
What's so crazy about that is that even at the time, I think most people knew that that was cringe as fuck. I think even progressives knew it was cringe. Like, even I remember my reaction to it was like, but it was like, I didn't really want to like dunk on her, because like at the time, it's like she was getting so viciously attacked by the right wing that I didn't want to pile on her, because I was like, oh, the right wing is already being so deranged about her that like, I just was like, all right, I'm going to let this go and ignore it. But like, I remember at the time seeing it, and I know other people on the left saw it too and thought like, cringe, like this is so like, but you let it go in the same way that like, because again, like, I don't want to be unreasonable. Like you try to be understanding of certain things. Like, she got kind of thrust into like the spotlight. And so that's why, like, when a lot of people would be really hard on her, I felt like I was always kind of making excuses for her or giving the
benefit. I did that too some. Yeah.
Because of the fact that I felt like oftentimes, and I don't think anybody was doing this purposely. I think it was because she was the most visible. She was the most famous. So she tended to get the brunt of the criticism instead of it going toward how I'm talking about how, like, I feel like there should have been more people around them as like a core team to like keep them in check. I felt the same way about the squad, where I felt like, I remember I kind of defended her about the force the vote thing at the time because nobody else was criticizing, at least in public or in large media venues or online, the other squad members. All of it was mostly being directed toward AOC. And I felt like that was unfair, not because she was getting criticism. She's a politician. You should be criticized when she doesn't do the right thing. But because I felt like they should be acting as a block. It shouldn't all be on AOC's shoulders, even though she's the most visible. There needs to be criticism of Ilhan Omar too, and Rashida Tlaib too, and Ayanna Pressley too. Like, one of the things that made me the most angry and disappointed in them is that they didn't act as a block. They should have gone in there and acted as a block, so that when they were getting these criticisms, many of them unfair because they just hate the left, many of them a lot of people from the right wing just like attacking them, and blue MAGA attacking them. Like, that's why you need that block, because you're going to get, like, I feel like the people who were pushing for them to get elected should have known that there was going to be a lot of hate coming and a lot and a lot of bad faith smears. And so as a result of that, they should have gone in there with not only a core team of good people around them that could hold them accountable, but also being fully aware that like we need to act as a block so that we can shield each other from some of the hate that we know that we're going to get. And I don't feel like that happened. It seemed like very quickly they were all kind of doing their own thing. And then I remember when people did criticize them for not voting together, Ayanna Pressley like went out and said like, listen, when you're voting, you're on your own. It's like, no, like
it made no sense. That was not the point. See, the difference between Justice Democrats and Brand New Congress is that at BNC, we did cultivate a community. There was a whole community. We had a summit, like a Brand New Congress summit. We had multiple ones. People were trained together. We would bring our candidates together, and I would do like training sessions with like multiple candidates. We had a community built up. And sadly, we met with a lot of, it was hard. It's hard to run a small dollar campaign. It's really hard to get these candidates elected. And so we ran like 30 candidates and what AOC won. And then we had like 2 others win that we recruited. And the reason was at the time, suppression of votes was one of the problems. Charles Booker was heavily suppressed in the Amy McGrath. We had the Democratic Party work against us. Zach Ringelstein, for instance, won his primary in Maine. The Democratic Party came out and said, we'll put you on the material, Zach, if you give us $250,000 to DNC PACs. Otherwise, we're leaving you off the material. And he was like, go, fly somewhere. And they printed off the materials. And for Senate, it said non-applicable. Their Senate candidate in Maine that was polling at 42% to 47%. He could have won if the party had backed him, but they didn't. The party didn't back anyone. When Paula Jean won her primary in West Virginia, she was polling at like 37%, which is damn good. Yeah. Against Shelley Moore Capito, they could have backed her. But instead, they even got the unions. The Democratic Party got the unions to back Shelley Moore Capito. They protected the incumbent over Paula Jean Swearengin. They don't want Senate seats. They don't want progressives to win. They will back a Republican over a progressive every time. In Anthony Clark's race, it went so far as Danny Davis was sending out these guys to go door to door to anyone that was elderly who signed the petition for Anthony to run and challenge it. It was like, this guy isn't running. And they lost in court. We got to keep ballot access, but it drained $70,000 in legal fees from Anthony's campaign. And in a small dollar race, that's detrimental.
Yeah.
And they were even putting flyers for Danny Davis in the voting booths, which is completely illegal. And these were the kinds of things it was really hard to get people elected. And the problem with Justice Democrats is they didn't build community. They didn't bring their candidates together, not really. They didn't have really a shared platform. They had no oath. We had an oath. Justice Democrats had no oath. They had nothing. And so, like, candidates could literally do whatever the hell they wanted. We were trying to build a team up for our candidates, just like you were saying, so that when they got at the Hill, they would have people behind them, have staff behind them. We were also supposed to hold them accountable once they were elected. And even that fell apart at Brand New Congress because they didn't want to, once they were elected and there was some sycophancy for that candidate because they were elected in that sense of loyalty, that partisanship, that political cultism, then you don't want to scrutinize Corey or you don't want to scrutinize AOC when they do something because, you know, our supporters are fans of them or whatever. And it's like, so then what's the accountability mechanism? What's the point of these organizations? If there is no accountability, they're not acting in a block. We can't get them elected. What's the point? And I don't mean to be nihilist, but that's a damn good question. I mean, that was my life's work. So, I mean, but it's the truth. That's the lesson I learned was it didn't work. It was a failed project. So what's next?
Right. Right. Which is a really good question and something that I want an answer to that I don't know. Because when a lot of people say, we have to reform the Democratic Party, I'm like, guys, we tried. Like it didn't work. Like that failed. Like the Justice Democrats thing, the brand new Congress thing, the ousting people from the left, it totally failed. And a lot of that is the fault. I mean, there's fault as you're kind of revealing by talking about this. There's fault on both sides when it comes to how this happened. There's fault, of course, on the side of the Democratic Party because they're corrupt as fuck. And we all know that the Democrats would rather lose to a Republican than allow a progressive to be elected. We know that about the Democratic Party. But the problem is that the left, like the progressive left, they are not strong enough or committed enough to actually be that opposition to the Democratic Party that they need to be. Because if you know those things about the Democratic Party, and we do, then you have to be incredibly organized, strong, have these mechanisms in place to hold them accountable, and have your supporters want to hold them accountable and want that for the party and want those things enough to actually be that enforcement mechanism. And if you don't have that and they basically just fall into stand culture, then there's not going to be anybody to hold them accountable or actually push the party to the left, because you're basically going to have a bunch of people once they're elected saying, don't criticize them, don't hold them accountable, because at least it's not such and such and such, as they get further and further absorbed into the Democratic Party. So there's no incentive for them to there's no incentive for them to act as a bloc. There's no incentive for them to hold the Democratic Party accountable because they're not being held accountable by the voters and by the people that helped them by the people that brought them to the dance. So it's at that point, it's like after everything happened with AOC and then Jamal Bowman and Cory Booker got ousted, which I thought was because of AIPAC. I still think largely it's because of AIPAC. But then I've also heard other people say, well, they really weren't popular in their districts. They weren't really doing any work. So I don't know if that's true or not, because I wasn't there. I'm not an insider. I don't work on these campaigns. What it looked like to me was that they got ousted because of AIPAC. But I've heard other people say that there were other, and I'm sure, you know what, oftentimes it's not one thing, oftentimes, as I'm sure it's many things. It's like, it's a combination of things. So it probably was. I wanted to watch, I think I wanted to watch Jamal Bowman's interview with Breonna Joy Gray, where she kind of calls him on this. But I think I forgot, and I'm not like a paid patron to her, so I couldn't see the whole thing. But I saw like a preview of it where I think he was asked about like what accountability, or what part does he play in the fact that he lost that seat, or the fact that they don't try to hold Democrats accountable once they were there. That to me was part of the point. Part of the point of getting elected was to be adversarial to the Democratic Party. And they weren't.
That was our messaging. That's what they were supposed to do. I mean, that's what they sold to their supporters that they were going to do.
Right. And that's where I get disappointed too in the voters, that they didn't hold them accountable. Because again, I understand like the desperation of really just wanting someone, but like, they got in there and their whole point was to be adversarial to the Democratic Party. And then they don't. And then it basically looks to me as an outsider like you're shutting the door behind you when you're supposed to. The Democrats are going to hate you and they're going to trash you and they're going to be rude to you. Okay, that's understandable. That's kind of the point. The point was to be adversarial to them and accept that they hate you, not try to be their buddy, not try to buddy up to them. They hate you, and you were supposed to accept that and embrace it and hold the door open for other progressives to come in behind you. And it doesn't look like to me that they did that. There was occasionally times where AOC did it. I remember she defended and campaigned, I think, maybe not campaigned, but endorsed Jessica Cisneros. But for the most part, they kind of just let the other progressives hang out to dry, and
they did
try to get them in, which to me defeated the purpose of the whole project. I was excited as a voter for the project of holding the Democratic Party accountable and electing people from the left, not for you to get in there for your own popularity, self-actualization, book deals, and fame, so that you can go to that gala. Like, no, it was supposed to be like you holding the door open for other people to come in behind you and vote as a block. Like that to me, that's what I thought the point was. That was why I was giving money to them. But when I realized
that was the whole point, they were supposed to lift other people up. I remember I wrote the line, it might take one to get through, but I'll pull up 100, behind me.
yeah.
That was the whole point. It was supposed to be that we pulled people up when we got people elected. They would endorse people, they would help campaign for them, and challenge the Dems, and this movement spread.
It looked like it was going to be like that at first, which I think is what was so incredibly disappointing. Like I remember when AOC first got elected, I was so excited, and we were talking about like Justice Democrats, brand new Congress. They were talking about Paula Jean Swearengin and Cori Bush, and I saw AOC go out and campaign for Brett Welder like early on in her thing, and it was like exciting. And then it was like, and then of course he got ousted by or lost to that hack that has done nothing but be a total shill the entire. I forgot her name. That's how useless she is. And Sharice Davids, that's her name. Is she even still in Congress? Like that's what a nothing, like basically just parrot she is. I don't even know if she's still in Congress. Okay.
Yeah, I have no idea.
But yeah, so the whole point is like,
but I love Brent. Brent was actually, he's a good guy.
Yeah, and it's like, the thing is too, is that they didn't fight. That was the thing. That was also the point. They were supposed to act as a block. My understanding was they were supposed to act as a block. They were supposed to get in there. They were supposed to challenge the Democratic Party. They were supposed to be adversarial to the Democratic Party, and they were supposed to help bring other progressives into Congress. And then once more progressives were into Congress, once they got more and more and more, they were going to flex their muscle. They were going to flex their power as a voting bloc and help not only stop bad legislation, but use that muscle and that kind of growing block that they had as a way to push the Democratic Party, to force them to the left, whether they liked it or not. So it always really irked me that they acted like this was shocking to them, that the Democrats smeared them, that the Democrats played hardball with them, that the Democrats didn't help them. They would act kind of like shocked by that. And it's like, I'm sorry, this was kind of the point. Like, we know that the Democrats, they would always act shocked and chagrined that the Democrats are corrupt pieces of shit, that we're going to try to keep them off the ballot. It's like, why were you not going into it with that mindset of knowing that's exactly what the Democrats were going to do? That was the point.
I knew. We coached them on this 1,000 freaking times. This wasn't a shock. That's what shocked me. I was like, you guys fucking know this. You came to my trainings on this. I told you this was going to happen. It happened during your entire race. They took you out to lunch, you got to meet them in person, and it completely changed your mind about them all of a sudden, and then you thought that they were going to be nice to you because it's like high school up there? No.
And it seems like that's what happened. Like they all started like weirdly acting shocked that they were getting attacked by the Democrats, and then they started like capitulating more and more, and I'm like, they were always going to, this happened when they all started attacking Ilhan Omar over calling her anti-Semitic because she made the comments about Israel. And immediately, they all threw her under the bus. And I was like, it just is crazy to me that, again, that none of this seems to have been expected. None of this seemed like they should have been a lot more adversarial than they were. And immediately it became a team sport. And to me, that was to me where I realized too that like the project had failed, because my understanding was that they were supposed to be okay with the Democrats hating them, that they were supposed to be okay with the fact that the Democratic establishment and especially the Democratic media was going to trash them, going to smear them. And the point was they had each other to back each other up, that they were supposed to back each other up, that they were supposed to.
And they knew it. I mean, the Triple C trashed them when they ran. I mean, the progressive
and that they were supposed to, and that they were supposed to defend each other, stand up for each other. Like, again, because I wouldn't expect any person alone to stand alone, but that they were supposed to act as a block and defend each other and embrace the hatred of the Democratic Party. But that's not what happened. They all went there, capitulated, and immediately started talking about their beloved colleagues. And I was like, what? What? Like the whole thing was just like, and then it was just like one after the other, just like not standing up for the other people that were running, not speaking out for the other people, not backing the other people that were running, that were trying to run and defeat incumbents. And then just basically going along with everything the Democratic Party was doing. And then, of course, like, you know, being, but they still act like that, though. They still do. So that to me was, it failed. Like it failed. The project did not work. And I don't see what the point is in progressive politics at this point.
You know why it failed? I think it wasn't just that, but I think that was a big part of it. I think it's because the policies that we ran on, our platform was extremely popular, right? Medicare for all, extremely popular. Getting rid of the DHS, an extremely popular idea. No one liked the freaking Patriot Act. You know, eliminating the AUMF, extremely popular. These were, you know, living wage, extremely popular. Paid family leave, very popular. These are still popular policies. But when the Democratic Party as a whole, and when these progressives started capitulating and sliding back, when somebody like Ro Khanna, who rolled out the bill for Medicare for all, started backtracking on Medicare for all, when they're such freaking idiots. The Democratic Party, and it's partially because they're bought out, and it's also because they're not poor. They ain't like us. They ain't like us. They're rich and elite, and they're liberals, and they're, you know, the same caste as the party cultists. The sycophants are the upper middle class. They're the upper 15%, the people that have the stocks, the people that have generational poverty, the people whose parents were able to send them to high school, who went to Ivy League schools and shit. They ain't like us. So they don't necessarily in their heart feel the same way about Medicare for all, because their people ain't dying. Somebody I know that I love very deeply has lost 3 family members. Yeah. Here in Appalachia, our mortality rate is now at 65 years old.
That's so crazy.
We lose people all the time to poison, to not having health care, not being able to get your teeth fixed, which hurts you, we don't have anything. We don't have housing. We can barely eat. We can't find fucking jobs. We're not even a red state. The Democratic Party abandoned us in 2009 and defunded our state party. And even though we have Andy Beshear, who's a decent governor, and I know he's a Democrat, people are going to get so mad at me for saying that, but he's a decent governor. He really authentically is. And I can't lie. That's just objectively true. No, I'm not a Democrat, but he's a decent governor. And but they've left. 86% of our seats were unchallenged. Nationwide, 65% of seats were uncontested, and almost all of those were GOP seats down ballot. The Democratic Party only had 364 offices in counties out of 3,244 counties nationwide. Only 300 county offices. No wonder Kamala lost. One, you're not even running on the policies. These progressives aren't pushing these policies. They're moving right. The Democratic Party moved right. The reason the progressive movement was popular was the policies. These candidates stopped talking about the policies. AOC stopped talking about Medicare for all.
Right. Yeah.
She stopped talking about it.
Yeah. She stopped talking about Medicare for all. She never brought up abolishing ICE again. Like the whole thing totally went out the window. I think that
they never mentioned the 21st Century Bill of Rights that I wrote for them, that they all signed on to, and that I got like 60 members of Congress to sign on to, but nobody mentioned it. I was like, what was the point? Like, I spent 2 months writing this thing, pouring my heart and soul into it, getting people to sign on to it, because I believed that maybe something can happen to help the people here. Like, I am fucking tired of poverty, tired of our people dying. I want a future for my damn kid. That's why I'm doing this. I'm not doing this to have some freaking career in politics. I'm not going to have that anyway. I don't have a degree from Northwestern. I can't afford that. I don't have a degree, from an Ivy League school. I don't have that background. I'm not going to be a journalist that's going to ever be on the news, because nobody's ever going to hire a redneck from Kentucky that's poor to do that. Totally. I did this because I wanted us to have, and I know it's not about me, but what I'm saying is I feel like this is the feeling of the people that supported this movement. It was the working class. It was the grassroots. It was the people that are just sick of this shit. They're just tired. And
no, totally. And
it crushed us.
It's people across the country that do feel this, because I feel what you're saying. And I live in a totally different. So you live in Kentucky. I was thinking, because you were talking about Paula Jean, I thought that you lived in West Virginia, but still Appalachia. I
Coal
think
country too. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that a lot of people feel that way. I feel that way. That's why I was so disappointed by it, because it's like, it's so hard existing in this world when you don't have money. Like it really is. It's really, really difficult. And people are either so delusional, or they don't care because they don't need to care. And I don't know. That's why I sometimes will be confused as to why, like, poor people like vote for Joe Manchin. Like, that confuses me. Like, because I understand why elite Democrats don't really care about things like Medicare for all and stuff, because they have money. But like, for those people, I know a lot of people in West Virginia are very poor. And so I'm like,
most of us don't vote here anymore.
Right.
That's the thing. It's not that people are voting for Hal Rogers, who's been there since before I was born, and I'm in my 40s. Like, this motherfucker's been up there Congress before I was born, which is insane. People aren't voting for Mitch McConnell. They just aren't voting because the party's abandoned us and nobody's ever helped us. So people stopped.
Yeah.
They stopped showing up.
What was the name of that guy who ran against Mitch McConnell?
Charles Booker.
Whatever happened to him?
He ran against Rand Paul, and I knew he wouldn't beat Rand Paul because people actually like him. He would have beat McConnell, but Amy McGrath, they poured, and she was like, I'll vote for Trump, because they always try to move to the right in these states because they're stupid and they've never talked to people here and they've never door knocked. When I worked Allison Lundergan Grimes' campaign in 2014 against Mitch, I was helping advise on comms. And then this crew comes down from DC, and she had a progressive platform, which was really popular. And this crew comes down from DC, and they're like, we're in Kentucky and you Hicks won't like this. So she can't talk about supporting Obama, and she needs to remove all of this stuff. We need to start putting in things that are more right-wing leaning, or she's going to lose. And I'm like, you're in labor country, honey. What the hell are you talking about? We freaking fought the Battle of Blair Mountain. You don't know what you're talking about. And she was like, well, we've done the research. And I was like, what research? So you're going to argue with people from Kentucky, because a lot of her team were saying, no, we're not changing this. But no, they knew better than us. They're like, no, you ignorant little Hicks. Let me fix this, because y'all are stupid and you don't know how to win your own campaigns. And they do this over and over again. The Democratic Party establishment comes down, they push a right-wing candidate, and they lose because no one wants to vote for. They already have it. We saw that with Kamala. Yeah. This is a strategy that they keep doing over and over again, because at the end of the day, they don't want someone left-leaning, because it challenges the establishment, and because they are establishment, and because they are conservative. They are a conservative party.
Yeah, Yeah.
So even if we would win, they don't want that. But also there's people that are just ignorant and bigoted and stupid about these states, and they don't know our history. They don't know anything about us. I'm like, Kentucky had something called the bitch caucus for 22 years. The most women in the state house of any state running for 22 years. And most of those women were Black women, believe it or not. And they called them the bitch caucus. So since these men were sexist, the women started wearing pins this big that said bitch caucus on them. They were amazing. And t-shirts that said bitch caucus. And that's how they would come into the house to vote, with like t-shirts that said bitch caucus on them. And they passed the first statewide LGBTQ policies to protect the LGBTQ community in 1997, 98, I think it was. They were one of the first states to pass gay marriage. We were the first state to write the Violence Against Women's Act, which ended up getting adopted nationally. We were the first to have statewide maternity leave. We were a very, very progressive state. And what happened is we started passing all these policies. In about 2004, the Democratic Party decided they were going to defund all these poor states so that they could focus in heavy blue areas where rich people are. And that's what they did. And they just left these states. They just handed them off to the GOP. They stopped giving us money to help run, and we didn't have the money here to support it because it was poor people that supported the campaigns. I'm not a Democrat, but the Democratic Party campaigns. So North Carolina, all blue. You can look it up on Ballotopedia until about 2005-06. Even Alabama, Georgia, Kentucky, North Carolina, South Carolina, West Virginia, all blue. So all those state houses fell in the early 2000s. And then Howard Dean came in and he was like, we need to bring back the 50-state strategy because we're losing ground all across the country. And he did it for 1 year. It was very successful. They removed him immediately. And then this last cycle, you know how much they gave for all the states to split amongst each other? $2.5 million for every state in the nation. And they bragged about it.
That's so
even though as a party they raised $1 billion.
Yeah. Yeah. And they spent like how much of that on the call her daddy fucking what is it called? Podcast setup, like the stage. Like it's
right.
Great. Yeah,
and so they blame it on the Republicans. They need that enemy so that they don't have to do anything. They need the boogeyman to keep fundraising. And we're the scapegoats. The poor people in poor states are the scapegoats.
Right. It's like the Hamas.
And did you hear Cory Booker say anything about taking back the state houses in 2026? No.
Of course not. Of course not. But they were
didn't say anything about the genocide either that he supports.
Of course not. And didn't say anything about Mahmoud Khalil, who's fighting right now to get back to New Jersey to have his case seen. And Cory Booker is the senior senator for New Jersey, and said nothing about that as the Trump administration is trying to keep his case in Louisiana because they think it'll be more favorable to them. Yeah. And that's one of the, but Blue Mag is in my comments today telling me that I'm just criticizing Cory Booker because, I hate Black men, strong, powerful Black men like Cory Booker. I know. It's very, I'm exhausted. And so this is why I think that the Democratic Party is now like, I'm really feeling like I'm done with these clowns. Like and I don't see the point because like I said, I was very excited about the movement to try to oust them and put progressives in place. But that strategy failed. And I think that it failed again. I already know that the Democrats are a right-wing party that are going to do all that they can to crush the progressives because they would rather have a Republican in office than a progressive. They hate the left. So I feel like the left should have gone in there wide-eyed about that. It's the same criticism I have of Bernie Sanders' 2020 campaign. I feel like he was woefully unprepared for the onslaught that was going to come his way, that we all knew was going to come his way from the establishment and from the media. And he did a very piss poor job of trying to fight back against that. And I think that, again, it just showed the failure to me of the progressives just always wanting to blame everything on the Democrats when we know who the Democrats are. And so there should have been a better plan in place to fight back against that and fight back against the media, knowing that that onslaught was coming. And
we tried to tell them.
Yeah. And so for that reason, that was kind of like the last straw to me, was the combination between Bernie Sanders losing in 2020 and the progressives in Congress not doing anything to fight back against the Democratic establishment, but in fact and just absorbing themselves into it and trying to be on the Democratic establishment's good side and work together. That to me was like and then Bernie and AOC like endorsing Biden after the genocide and doing propaganda for the Democratic Party after the genocide was kind of like the last straw. And so I don't think that that's why when I see well-meaning people on the left being like, we gotta, like somebody like Kyle Kalinske, who I do like, and I do think is a person who tries to do the right thing. I see him being like, we got to take over the Democratic Party. I'm like, bro, we already tried that. It didn't work. It failed. Like, it literally failed.
Kyle should know more than anyone. I mean,
right.
he was on our board. He should know.
He was also the same person that literally got, like, Bernie Sanders wouldn't even interview with Crystal and Kyle and friends unless Kyle wasn't there because he was mad that Kyle criticized him. Like, that's crazy to me. Like, so, you know, I honestly think that, like, he's just has a lot of copium. Like, he still is trying to make this happen. I think that he's wrong. Like, I guess what I'm trying to say is I see people say that they think he's full of shit. He's a bad person. I don't think so. I think he's still in denial. I think that he still has copium about the Democratic Party and thinks that they're going to do something that they're not going to do. I'm past that point. But I also, like, don't really know what to do then. Because I'm like, I also don't want to be
I can help with that.
Well, I don't want to be a nihilist.
Some suggestions.
Yeah, I don't want to be a nihilist, right? And be like, oh yeah, everything sucks. And for that reason, that's it. It's like, I don't want to be a nihilist, but I don't believe the Democratic Party is going to be reformed. As I said, we tried that. It failed. So now what? Then people will tell me, okay, go to the Green Party. I know people get really mad when I say this. The Green Party are also a bunch of people who have done nothing and proved nothing and are pretty useless and pretty toothless. And people will be like, I know the left gets super mad at me when I say that. And they're like, oh, you don't understand. The Democrats sued them off the ballot, like this and that. I understand that the Democrats are fucking corrupt pieces of shit that are going to go after the left at every turn. But again, that is something that you need to, if you're the Green Party, need to prepare for, need to understand is going to happen. When they were trying to get me to vote for Jill Stein, the Green Party didn't even have an active presence in New York State. Like at all. There wasn't even a volunteer office to call. Or like, they didn't even have an Instagram page, bro. Like, so I'm done with the Green Party. Also, I think the Green Party is toxic. I think their branding is toxic. I'm sure you understand, as somebody who does marketing and you do press, branding matters. Like, and what does the Green Party have to show besides being endless losers that just like show up every once in a while to, I guess, like say, like campaign in occasional elections and then disappear again. And I know that there are people in the party that are doing the work, but I'm talking about branding right now. And so I'm like, I don't really know what to do. I really don't know what to do.
Well, it's difficult because we're not taught, and I didn't know until I was like an executive director of a third party, like what it takes. I had to look at ballot access in every single state. Now I knew about like ballot access for candidates, but I hadn't really looked at ballot access for parties until then. And every single state is completely different with their ballot access rules.
Right.
Some are really easy to get on the ballot. A few, most aren't. Massachusetts, for instance, somebody was like, well, Massachusetts, I was able to get on the ballot. We were able to start a party just by petitioning. Well, yes. In Mass, you can do that. That's like the only state. In Kentucky, You can only establish a party if you get 20% of the presidential vote by running a presidential candidate. So you have to get the petition to get the president, whoever you're going to be running as a president. And I helped some people organize so that we could get Jill Stein. And that's the only reason that's one of the main reasons I supported her, is because I was hoping that, I knew it was a long shot, but at least it was something. But one of the reasons that they run a president is because they have to maintain party status in most of these states and a bunch of these states. In some states, you have to run a gubernatorial race, so they have done a decent job of maintaining ballot access in most of these states, which takes a ton of work in itself. Where they're missing some of their components is, I dealt with Green Party candidates that I was, trying to help. I advised several that didn't want to fundraise. I'm like, dude, you have to freaking fundraise. And they're like, I don't want to ask for fundraising. Another person was like, I don't want to door knock. That's, it feels like marketing. And I'm like, well, then fucking don't run. If you don't want to do field work and you don't want to get out the vote and door knock, don't run. So those were kind of the weird things. But also,
that's why, but I hear that though. That's why I wouldn't run. Because the idea of fundraising to me sounds like I'd rather drill screws into my toes than have to
terrible. I hate it.
Yeah, I'm like, I can't do that.
I do. I despise it, but I've had to do it 1,000 times, but I despise it. But it is necessary, because also you don't want to take advantage of volunteers and never pay a staff who's working full time for you. That's shitty. Totally. How is that leftist? Like, don't pay my workers because somehow that's leftist. Like, no, right. Totally. That's asinine.
Yeah.
But
people should get paid. I think, was it Diane Morales? Was that the person who ran in the New York City mayoral race a couple years ago? Was that her name, Diane Morales? Anyway, there was a huge drama amongst her staff because some people weren't getting paid, and it was this huge disaster. So yeah, people always should get paid for their work. Always, of course.
And, volunteers are great if it's door knocking and things like that. But if you have somebody working 40 hours a week, you need to figure out a way to pay them. That's only fair. And yes, I agree not to pay these big consulting firms. They suck. Don't, take out a big consulting firm if you're a candidate.
The professional loser consultants that do nothing but get Democrats to lose election. What do you need a consultant for? For them to be you need to move to the right? What?
Most of the time they suck. I've met a few good consultants, but that's far and few between. They're almost all grifters. But I will say, you don't have to run in a party to run. And I think for me, that's the solution. It's easier to run independent almost everywhere. It's easier to get ballot access. You fly under the radar. The parties automatically discount you. But the thing about running independent is, over the last decade, now 2/3 of voters identify as independent, completely shifted. Most every year, there's a significant percentage of voters that are unregistering from either party and registering independent or unaffiliated despite primaries. So there's this huge opportunity right now. If you go out as an independent candidate and you say you're not connected to either party, that could be a selling point for you, especially in the state house races. So imagine if you had a block and you started an unaffiliated PAC in a state political action committee. You could fundraise, you could support candidates to a certain extent, you could promote them, you could train them through a political action committee. You could have a slate, you could have, principles that they all run on. And you wouldn't have to have an established party. They could run under that slate. And if you got 15 people elected to a state house, that could completely freeze policy, and they would have to negotiate with you. And that could throw a wrench in some of these red states, especially where they're not red at all. They're more purple, or they're very independent states like Kentucky, West Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina. You could run independent and you could throw a wrench in their policies, and we could start fighting it if we're talking electoral, because I think we have to do a whole lot of other shit, boycott, strikes. We need a general strike, we need local community organizing, all that stuff. So I'm not saying electoral is the solution. I'm saying if we're talking about electoral, then I think running independent is the way to go right now. People are always like, we need to build a party. Honey, it can take 15 years to build a party. We ain't got 15 years. And I'm not exaggerating. It could take 10 to 15 years to build a party with ballot access rules that are in place right now. And the parties have created this system on purpose so that they keep control. We don't need that. Fuck it. They allow people to run independents in states until they change those rules, which I'm sure they'll try to once we start doing it. Run independent and take these seats. You run all the way to the general. You don't have to worry about a primary. You're not beholden to any party, so there's no party cultism you have to worry about.
Yeah.
And you can still build up a support if you have a slate and you have a community and you're running on policies instead of a party. So like you could start it with like, we're the people running on, for instance, a 21st century Bill of Rights. We're the 21st century Bill of Rights people. And we run under, it could be an organization banner like we did with Brand New Congress. And you can run that way, run independent. And I would love to see that kind of organizing. I would love to see someone start that because everyone wants to build a party, especially communist and socialist, because, you know, they want one party rule or whatever. And they've read Marx and they're like, we have to have a political party. And I'm like, you guys are boxing yourselves in to a parameter that's unnecessary right now. You can sign up and run today as an independent. You can build a coalition without a party if you establish a PAC. There are a few benefits to being a party, but do the benefits to being a party outweigh just getting people in fucking office? I don't think so. So I don't know why people are waiting to like build this party when people can be running right now.
Yeah.
Just do it. Just run. And so many of the down ballot races aren't even, they're not even partisan. So like for school board and stuff like that. This kid that worked with me at Brand New Congress, he was amazing. He graduated high school and he ran for school board and he won.
Wow, that's
just
awesome.
last year.
I agree. I think that more people should run as independents. I was thinking that when the guy who ran in Nebraska did really well, and he didn't win, but like he almost won. And I think that more people should do that. More people should run as independents because you're right. Who has time to like build an actual party? It's like people should just run as independents and we should normalize people running as independents and kind of break out of this duopoly. The question then becomes like, okay, so because you're right, anybody could do that today, but then it becomes, okay, how do they do that in a way where they actually could get support and, you know, kind of build some of the mechanisms and get support in a way that they're not going to have because they're not connected to a party.
That's true. But right now, we don't really have a party that has any support. So you got to start somewhere. You can build it into a party as you go if you wanted to build a party.
Yeah, that's true. People start running as independents. Somebody, please, for the love of God, run in New York 7 and get rid of our congresswoman who's 100 years old and won't retire. Please, run as an independent.
Imagine if we had another Bernie that was younger, if it was an AOC that was an independent. You could build a party around that. You could actually get a gubernatorial candidate to run and win. You could, and I'm not saying not to vote green, or I'm not trying to like naysay the Greens completely. I have my criticisms of them. I am not green myself. I'm not any party, and I probably will never be, because every time that I've dealt with it, it can be cultist. I think political cultism is part of the problem. There's a positive to that kind of organizing and building a community. But at the same time, when you start building it around a party and not the policies can get lost. And then you're just loyal to the party, and then you're loyal to anyone who runs under the party and to everything the party does. And then you stop criticizing the candidates. And I think that's, maybe I'm pie in the sky, but I think that's part of the problem we have, is that, you know, people are too attached. Some people, certain part of our culture has been conditioned to treat it like sports ball instead of the fact that these people work for us and they're supposed to be passing shit to help us. It's not, team sports.
Totally.
Maybe if a bunch of people run independent, it'll break people out of that team sports mentality and people actually look at policies that people are trying to push instead of what banner they're running under.
Yeah, I agree. It's so toxic. The tribalism is so toxic, and it makes it so that people like Blue MAGA cry when you criticize their faves because they think that this is a fucking sport and that we're just supposed to rah-rah cheer people even if they're genocide apologists and do shit like pose with war criminals like Cory Booker. And the bar is literally in hell.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question? Do you think that I had this theory, and this was while Kamala was running, that she was normalizing Trump because she was running on the most lethal military and she was running on, I'm going to be tougher on the border than Trump. And they were running on, dehumanization of Palestinian people. And Blue MAGA was like, well, if Kamala wins and we save one person and 100,000 die, at least we saved one person. I'm like, what the frick are you talking about? But I was having people argue those kinds of arguments with me. And I felt like the dehumanization that I was seeing from Blue MAGA contributed to normal. And I feel like the Democratic Party normalized Trump because they were like rehabilitating freaking Dick Cheney. How do you feel about that?
It was disgusting watching it. Like horrifying. It was a lot of people like being like, oh, well, if you care so much about the genocide in Gaza, like that's why you have to vote for Kamala because it won't, the gaslighting of, oh, they're going to get a ceasefire when that's never what she said. She never promised that. She had a talking point that every other politician had, but at the end of it, it always ended with, but we're going to do anything that Israel wants and they're our staunchest ally and blah, 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 blah. And what they did was normalize not only Trump, but normalize the genocide, which is why I can't stomach when Blue MAGA or any Democrat will be like, oh, see, this is what Trump is doing to Gaza now. He should have voted for Kamala. The only reason why Trump can do anything he is doing to Gaza now is because these motherfuckers spent 15 months allowing Israel to flatten Gaza, allowing them to kill children, allowing them to level the place, bomb hospitals, kill journalists, and every fucking day stand up there and go, Israel has a right to defend itself. We're going to make them have everything they need. Trump would not have been able to do anything that he is now doing regarding Gaza, if not for the Democratic Party completely rolling out the proverbial red carpet for him and getting all of that shit ready so that he could come in there and, quote, finish the job. Because they didn't put a red line down. They didn't say that it wasn't okay that they were doing this. They empowered it at every fucking step. So
they built the buttresses.
Yeah. And it was disgusting to watch and disgusting to see the way that they embraced Liz Cheney and Dick Cheney and embraced throwing trans people under the bus because we're just going to enforce the law now and they wouldn't let a Palestinian come on stage at the DNC, but they let a fucking border patrol agent come on stage at the DNC. And it was, this kind of goes to what you were saying about the cult mentality, where all of the Blue MAGA's quote unquote values went out the window and they got into the gutter with the right and basically co-signed all the dehumanization that the right wing does to trans people, to immigrants, to Palestinians. They let all of that slide under the guise of, because we want something better and they're going to protect them from the people that we are currently throwing under the bus. It's actually insane. The gaslighting is next level. Like
they tell you to lay down and let the bus roll over you for them. It's the people that want to go back to brunch because they're comfortable when Democrats are in because whatever's happening doesn't affect them as much. But some people say, I understand the arguments when it comes to, what is that? Sorry. When it says, when they talk about like people of color being impacted or and that sort of thing. I understand that, but at the same time, like, okay, I covered Obama and Obama's policies when it came to immigration. Can you turn that down, Bob? Hold on a second. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
It's okay. Sorry. My brother was like TikToking in there. But they tried to, they ignore everything. They ignored that Bill Clinton cut almost all of our social safety nets. They ignored that Obama privatized the prison industrial complex. He was the one that built the freaking concentration camps. I wrote a story in 2021 about Biden's domestic terrorism laws. Did you hear about those?
Yeah.
They were so vague. They had like against, one of the lines was if you do anything that's un-American or goes against the government. Yeah. And I'm like, and Trump's now he is using Biden's domestic terrorism policy to rendition people.
Yeah.
It's Biden's policy.
Yeah. But they don't care. They don't care. That's what something that I realized about, Blue MAGA and liberals is that, like, I always thought, like, oh, the fight was that, they really care about these things. They really care about human rights and immigration and, all these things. And it was really like going through this campaign with Kamala Harris as she moved further and further and further to the right and watching them defend it and leave all of their principles behind to defend these horrible, horrible, horrible policies in the name of defeating Trump. And so at the end of the day, I'm like, what are your values? What values? Your values are defending the Democrats. You don't care about the policy. That's why they can be so excited about Cory Booker's vapid ass fucking speech and then be furious at anybody that criticizes it, because to them, that is enough. That is the point. The performance is the point. They don't care about the policy.
It's about feeling good, feeling like, oh, I am good. A lot of people say, I voted. I went out and I voted. I did the thing. I did what I was supposed to do. And no one else voted. They didn't get the assignment. And I'm like, dude.
I did vote. I just didn't vote for Kamala Harris because I wasn't going to vote for somebody who was saying more genocide. More cowboy.
I have a red line at mass murdering people.
There wasn't even a promise, okay? There wasn't even we're going to try to make it stop. It was literally, I'm going to do anything that Israel tells me to do, but I'm going to do nice girl boss genocide with a smile on my face and pretend care and concern rather than mean, rude genocide like Trump.
Mm-hmm. No. And also nice girl boss mass deportations.
Right. Like, oh yeah, I'm going to be the meanest, most most horrible on the border. Like, you just watch. I'm like, why are you promising this? Like, this is crazy. It reminded me of, and I talked about this at the time, it reminded me of the way that you see a lot of women bosses at a corporation. When you're at a corporation and you have a woman boss who will be so fucking vicious to you, and you like dread going in, and you're kind of wishing low-key you had a man boss, because you know as a woman that she is trying to be vicious and horrible so that she can prove that she can be like the boys. She's proving that she's not like all these other soft women. She's going to be a bigger asshole to you to prove that she can be a sociopath like the men. Mm-hmm. And I felt that with Kamala Harris's campaign, that she was like, oh, I can go out there and talk about a lethal military and how vicious we're going to be because I'm going to prove that I can be like the boys. I was like, this is horrible.
It's sad because it's harmful, because there is a cultural shift in a normalization of a lack of empathy, and the United States has always had rancid selfishness, but for the people that say it's always been this way, it's not worse. It is worse. It has gotten worse. We had beat it back into the shadows some. That's a fact. But yes, I acknowledge that the Democratic Party has, I mean, I've written about it 1,000 times, has, passed all this horrible legislation that, Clinton was basically Reagan 2.0. Yes, I'm aware of all of this. But right now, Trump is awful. We are in a authoritarian, like a full-on authoritarian state. We're heading into techno-monarchy, Curtis Yarvin, these guys. And then you've got Ezra Klein out here basically doing the liberal version of techno-monarchy shit.
I know.
We're in a bad place.
And that's the thing that really gets me. We don't actually have an opposition. There is no opposition. Mm-hmm. You have fascism, and then you have fucking, and like you said, techno-monarchy and techno-feudalism. And then you've got Ezra Klein being like, abundance, TM. Like, it's just so insane. We don't actually have an opposition. And I think one of the things that really gets me too is that I think it has gotten worse. And I think that a lack of empathy and the dehumanization has gotten worse. I can't stand when people try to like gaslight and be like, oh, it was always like this. America was always like this. It's like, okay, America has a very ugly history. And there seems to have always been this kind of push and pull. But I can tell you what I haven't ever seen. At least in the 1940s during the Holocaust, there was a lot of plausible deniability because who the fuck had a TV? Like, there was a lot of Americans that had no fucking idea what was happening, right? They're working their jobs. They're living in the horrible, like, no workers' rights. A lot of them working in the fucking factories. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have the media apparatus that we have today. Most people did not even know the Holocaust was happening until well after, right? Most people didn't know what was happening. Today in 2025, we have cell phones, and I'm seeing decapitated children on my screen every single day. And I'm seeing that our taxes are funding it. And people in this country know that it's happening and they don't care, or at least they don't care enough to put their fucking foot down when it comes to trying to do something about it or to stop it or to not empower the politicians that are voting for this. That to me is horrifying. That to me is, no, at least there was some plausible deniability in the 1940s Holocaust of Americans and people around the globe did not really know what was happening. We know what is happening in Gaza and people are just looking the other way. They're shrugging at it. They've normalized it. And it's horrifying. It's horrifying.
I found there's a big class divide in the range of empathy. And this is a hard thing to talk about. People don't like to hear it. But it's the truth. Like a lot of MAGA, go look at the TikTok videos. Look at the houses where they live. Look at where they're living. Look at the trucks and shit they're driving. These people are not poor. The hardcore MAGA are upper middle class. Yeah. The liberals, same thing. The ones that shit talk about Gaza and stuff, they are driving in one of those cars that has like the 3, sunroofs and shit. I couldn't afford that shit in my dreams, let alone, in real life. They living in trailers. They ain't living in a 2-bedroom house like I am with 3 people. Thank God that I have like actually one of the only nice landlords in the whole freaking planet that she owned these houses. So she gave them to like elderly people that were homeless, and she's still letting my brother and I stay here even after my mom passed this year. I'm really lucky. I know a nice landlord. God, how the hell did I find that? I don't know, but thank goodness. If not, I'd be on the street, to tell you the truth. But these people, there is a class divide when it comes to the empathy. When the people that I hear talking about Gaza or caring, even across the political spectrum, are people that are suffering, are the people that are suffering, are the lower 50%. And there are a lot of people against it. But our voices aren't heard. Our voices aren't elevated. We're not the ones on mainstream media. We are not the ones writing the newspaper articles. We are not the ones being heard, except for on places like TikTok or here,
well,
like what you're doing right now.
We're not even the ones being heard on fake independent media that have these billionaires and dark money groups giving them tons of money. Like, what happens? What happened to me was that I started my own YouTube channel, tiny little scrappy channel, just me talking, and I got permanently demonetized by YouTube for talking about Palestine. And a bunch of, which I still resent and I still will be bringing up for until the end of time, a lot of really large left channels ignored me when I asked them to help, when I asked them to speak out about what had happened to me, because we both know that when it comes to this kind of media apparatus, that the bigger channels have more sway, that they're more willing to have somebody like YouTube listen to them. If a lot of them have YouTube handlers, like not handlers, but they have contacts at YouTube, like people who have like 500,000 or 1 million followers, like they have like a contact at YouTube, right? It's just an example. And they didn't say anything because their concern is not for people like me or other people on the left who have tiny platforms who are trying to speak out about this stuff. Their concern is getting views and making money. And they don't care. They don't actually care about the project. And that's infuriating to me because, again, they don't care to hear from people like me. And the problem is with being permanently demonetized is not only is that economic violence against people like me and other people it's happened to, it's not just me that it's happened to, but it's also a way to silence these creators like me trying to spread the message that we're trying to spread. Like, because it has definitely hurt me since YouTube permanently demonetized me. It's not just about the money. Everything is slowed. My views have slowed. My following has slowed, like growing. Like, it hurts your ability to be in the algorithm by being permanently demonetized, by not having people be able to send you super chats and shit like that. Like, it hurts
we ran into that at Status Quo when we were covering the on the ground protest, you know, for Cop City, for instance, and what was going on at East Palestine. Our channel started being slowed down. I mean, we saw it firsthand. I mean, now we're starting to grow again because we were covering the LA fires and the explosion there, because we do on the ground, like a lot of on the ground journalism. And our on the ground journalism does well. So the channel is growing again, thank goodness. But we saw a lot of suppression. We were one of the few people on the ground January 6th, and they got a whole bunch of footage that the mainstream media stole some of our footage and never accredited us for it. And then YouTube took our footage, like took it down and suppressed it. And, you know, it was one of our videos that had like 2 million views. So it ended up like the channel ended up getting. So that's what happens to independent journalists that like will go out and get voices of people on the ground, is that it's a constant battle just to stay monetized and to, you know, combat the algorithm. You have to.
No, yeah, I totally understand that. Where my beef is that when it happens to the right wing, you see them defend each other and build each other up and come to each other's defense and rally around each other. You don't see that on the left. It's a very like, oh, well, that sucks for you. Like it's actually ironic that the right wing is all about individualism and individual liberty, but they show a very communal, like they're very communal with each other. And on the left is the one that claims to be, oh, so many of us are socialists and communists. They're all about community. They love using organizing buzzwords. But then when it comes to something like, okay, we're all in media, we're all doing this, and this happened to me, you don't see any of that. You don't see any of them rallying around the people that this happened to the way that the right does. And like I said, it didn't just happen to me. It happened, I can think of 3 other left creators that are also kind of small or smaller that this happened to, that got demonetized for the very same thing, permanent demonetization. No one said anything. There should have been left creators, large left creators, rallying around those channels, including mine. And you didn't see it. So the so-called community-based side, the left, had nothing to say or to try to help the people that this happened to. When you're part of your goal as a left media creator, whether you're a journalist, whether you're a commentator, whether you're a podcaster, should be to be helping and promoting other people on the left that are getting out your same message in a different way. Because we all have different ways of communicating with each other or communicating with our audiences. I might be able to reach someone that somebody who also is on the left can't reach. They can reach people that I can't reach because I'm off-putting to some people because I'm aggressive and I swear a lot. Like everybody has different communication styles. But what I consistently see on the right is them fucking going to bat for each other, standing up for each other, platforming each other. There is none of that on the left, which is the reason why you see those little info bubbles where it's like, what are all the top podcasts and all the top YouTube shows and all this? They're all fucking right-wingers. They're all right-wingers. And it's because there is none of that camaraderie on the left. And there is none of that solidarity on the left, which really actually not low-key pisses me off because it should absolutely be the case that we do that. We're the ones calling ourselves pro-community, and we don't even do that for each other. Like, it's crazy.
It's really sad. I worked at the People's Party for a while. Stupid. I should have never gone there, but I did. After I lost my job at Brand New Congress, I needed a job. They offered me one, and I thought, okay, maybe I can help a third party grow. And their board had asked me to become their executive director. And I didn't know the guy that was the chair at the time. He was like, they'd removed him from the executive director role. Nobody had ever told me. Oh, you want to read Johnny's post? Hey, Johnny.
I just wanted to put it up because I thought this was also a good point. They have conventions constantly. They always are socializing with each other. Like, we literally don't do any of that.
We used to.
Rarely. Yeah, all of it is treated like the right treats each other like comrades and the left treats each other like competition.
Yeah, because we used to have like the People's Summit, and then I used to volunteer for Netroots, but they got absorbed. Like, all of it got absorbed. Our revolution got absorbed by the Democratic Party. You know, the Working Families Party became a wing of the Democratic. Like, it all got absorbed by the establishment, and then like we lost. Like, the independent kind of lost when this happened. Like, when I went to work for them,
but I'm
people
not
were
just
like,
talking about electoralism. I'm talking about like media, because this is like,
oh yeah, that's what I'm
media.
And they right, and the story came out. The guy who was the chair, he sexually abused me, raped me, and I turned him in to our board. And what ended up happening was he fired almost the entire board and myself, and other staff members. And then it got leaked to Status Quo. Jordan asked if he could run a report on it, and I said, yeah, that's fine. This was before I was working with Status Quo. But I'd known Jordan, you know, loosely, because I'd seen him at some protest, and we'd ran into each other organizing through the years, but I didn't know him super well or anything. So I was like, sure, yeah, go ahead. And that's okay. When he found out it was me, he'd ran the story before he knew initially who it was. It got exposed that it was me, and a lot of these journalists and stuff had known me through the years, right? Had met me, had known my organizing work and stuff. But where it was People's Party, it was either one of two things. One, people thought of People's Party as a joke, and because of that political side, like, they were like, and then other people were like, oh, well, you know how Me Too is, and you know how, because Jackson Hinkle, Jimmy Dore had my abuser on to smear me on their show before I even that they even knew who my name was. So before it was even a release that it was me, he was making his rounds on Jimmy Dore, Jackson Hinkle, and people were afraid to say anything at the time because Jackson Hinkle and Jimmy Dore were still considered the left. So we had people saying things like, well, you know, I don't know, maybe it was like a Me Too allegation. I was like, what the fuck? Like, I didn't expect people to, I don't know, I just expected a little bit more respect as a human being and a person, you know, especially when I came forward than what happened. Luckily, you know, when the People's Party released a whole bunch of my text with him, it was really abhorrent, and they were doing a bunch of victim blaming, and it was very clear that they were abusers at that point. People sort of started treating me better. And then after during the Rage Against the War Machine stuff, everyone was like siding with them again. A lot of the independent media, and was giving me a hard time because they were like, well, Zaynab, you're just criticizing this rally because it's them. And I'm like, no, they're organizing with literal Nazis. And I think that there needs to be a line drawn in the sand, because they're organizing with people that are pro-Israel. They're organizing with AIPAC people. And this was before, you know, I've been a supporter of BDS for years. So I was like, what are you doing? They're not anti-war. They're having Tulsi Gabbard speak. She wants to carpet bomb Iran. She wants to bomb my family. Like, what the fuck? Like, why is she at an anti-war rally?
Are you Iranian?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
half. half
Oh,
Iranian, half Scots-Irish.
oh. Oh, you know what? This is a really random question, but it has to do with being Scots-Irish. Why is it that people that went to Appalachia get called Scots-Irish rather than just Irish? Do you know?
We're a mix. Appalachia's a really interesting history. So we, a lot of people came here that were like escaping oppression other places, and the mountains was kind of like shelter for them.
Yeah.
And what ended up happening is Jackson's army came here to remove the indigenous people. So the indigenous people, along with the Irish and the Scots-Irish, like rose up and fought Jackson's army and ran them off. So our indigenous people here, we're all kind of mixed race, like with each other. We also had Melungeons, who were like people who were escaping the Turkish genocide here. We had some Jewish expats here as well. And then we had escaped slaves because the Underground Railroad ran directly into Appalachia. So we also put a bunch of KKK's head on a pike, but that's a whole other story. But we were always kind of known to be roughneck, very, very leftist, very revolutionary. So we started getting smeared as like hillbillies and stuff. We kind of adopted Scots-Irish as a unifying thing because everything blended together, kind of. And one of the reasons that you hear all the stuff about us being inbred, barefoot, all this other stuff, ignorant, toothless, is because we were actually a very mixed race culture. And yeah, and then later it ended up being like white trash or whatever. I don't know where that came from. But no, Appalachians were very, very mixed race culture, but we were Scots-Irish, indigenous, escaped slaves, and basically all the riffraff you can imagine gathered into the woods for like shelter, basically, from.
It must be devastating to see that the spokesperson for Appalachia right now is JD Vance.
Oh, I did several shows. I did some rounds on some shows when he was first announced. Hillbilly Elegy, he says that Appalachian men are immune to work. He ain't from here. His grandparents, lived the county over from where I live. He came here occasionally in the summers, but come to find out, his grandparents weren't even poor. Yeah, they weren't even poor. He talks about it in the book like they were. They weren't.
No, but also what I always find amazing about JD Vance that no one ever points out is that he has so much contempt for working people and
he hates people.
It's all like you're a giant loser who didn't pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Like it's like, but then he like claims the title. He wants to claim the identity while also simultaneously putting the identity down. Like it's crazy.
Because Peter Thiel paid him to. Peter Thiel was like, "You'll be a great token.
Right.
Come work for me. You're going to be a great token. I'm going to fund this book for you. And we're going to fund this book, Hillbilly Elegy. And you're going to write this propaganda." And that's what he did. And it was just as bad as when Diane Sawyer was like, "Some of my family was originally from Kentucky and they're down here feeding their babies Mountain Dew." And I'm like, "No, we're not. We ain't feeding our babies Mountain Dew. What the fuck are you talking about?" She's like, "It's something called Mountain Dew mouth." And I was like, "That's not a thing." And dentists came on television and they're like, "There is no Mountain Dew mouth." Like, lady, people do have teeth problems, and it's because we don't have dental care down here for poor people. It's not because they're feeding their babies fucking Mountain Dew. But it was the same thing. It was like Diane Sawyer all over again. Demonizing, coming down and tokenizing poor Appalachians has been like a historical artifact for years. People used to come and like take pictures of us on our front porch barefoot, and then like leave and then like make all kinds of money off poverty porn and then never come back and like help us, Yeah. Like, "Oh, these poor Appalachians, we need to raise money for them." That money's never going to go to their communities.
Yeah.
And that's what JD Vance was like, the modern version of that.
Totally. That's crazy. It's funny. I didn't realize Mouth was a name. But it is real though. It happened to me. Okay, careful with the Mountain Dew, folks. As somebody who was addicted to Mountain Dew and lost a couple teeth, so
That's good
careful about
advice,
that.
though.
But anyway, I've got to switch now to Rumble because we do our last point show about Rumble. But I would
Okay.
definitely like to talk again because I feel like we didn't even. There's still so much to talk about. We didn't even get through it. I'm not a good interviewer because I'm not an interviewer. So like I
You
just
did great.
go with it. But it was so great to talk to you, and I would love to do it again have you on again and chat. But it was great to like learn about you and learn about your history and your work and everything you've had to say. I think it'd be fun to have you on again and talk more about what it would look like for people to start organizing around independence and also the left media. I think that would be interesting to do again.
Yeah, what people did with you was wrong. I didn't know that you were demonetized until you said it the other day, but people should have each other's back no matter what when it comes to that happening. And it is a shame that
I'm also going to keep talking about it too, because I'm a Scorpio, so I don't let things go. Okay. I can be mad about this for a very, very long time. Okay. So I'm going to keep talking about it.
Definitely do. And thanks for having me. I've had a lot of fun coming on. I probably rambled a little bit too much. I had too big of a Red Bull. So yeah.
Well, tell everybody where they can follow you.
You guys can find me on Zeynab Day, and that's my YouTube channel. I will have more content coming out. I also have a Substack, Zeynab Day at Substack, or you can find me at bullhornbulletin.com, and that'll take you to my Substack, Bullhorn Bulletin. I am just now getting back to writing more content, doing more videos. I have a 10-part series coming out with Lila and Pat from Punch Up Pod, and we're going to be covering the techno monarchy. And it's going to be a long series because we got to go back and we got to talk about like also things like Israel's influence. We got to talk about the history of, things like Cop City and how things started there, because it's all connected. So keep in mind with that. We'll be coming out with that in just a couple of weeks, our first episode. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And I do occasionally do work for Status Quo News. I've got a story on there actually, if people want to check it out, about the 50-state strategy, abandonment, running independent. I sort of did an hour and a half thing on like what it might take to run and why it's so hard to start a third party and that kind of stuff to, I don't know, maybe help people understand what that's all about.
All right. Well, that's awesome. I'm excited to know that you're going to come out with a series about the techno monarchy, because that is something I'm very interested in. And I don't think it's talked about nearly enough. So that's cool to know you guys are going to do it. It's
unreal because I saw this stuff happening, and I remember Mencius Molebug or whatever the hell his name was, and I was like, this stuff's creepy. Like, if this ever comes to fruition, like, what the hell? And then I'm like watching it play out as JD Vance comes on. I was like, oh no. And then like everything that's happening now is tied to that. Like all of Trump's policies isn't just Project 2025. It's the techno monarchy shit. Like they want to turn us into a slave race because they know AI is going to replace us. So they're getting ready for that. That's the honest to God truth. I know that sounds crazy, but they're getting ready for robots and AI to replace us. And I am not being hyperbolic. I am being literal.
No, yeah, no, it's true. That's why I think that, I'll say this last thing before we go and switch, that that's why I think that, again, the left oftentimes is, and I know I get people get upset because especially since I am like more on the left, but I feel like a lot of communists and Marxists aren't really paying attention to what is actually coming, because they think that we're just going to like I hear a lot of communists and Marxists who have kind of the America bad, fuck America view of everything. They think that we're going to have a revolution and that America's going to dissolve and like something good is going to come out of it. And I'm like, I feel like what they're not paying attention to is the fact that, yes, America is going to dissolve, but it's not going to go the way that you think it is, because the techno-feudalists have already been organizing and have a plan to take it over. So,
and it's not 180 years ago, dudes. Like,
right.
You got to get your heads, I'm not saying not to read theory, but you got to get your heads out of damn theory and pay attention to what's happening right now.
Right. And I'm all for that too. But like, yeah, I feel like there is a little bit of, let's like think that this is going to happen and just read theory or read about people that we look up to and think that it's going to happen the way that it happened. Like, we are living in a totally different world. And I feel like not enough people are paying attention to that.
And Marx said it might completely change in 200 years, that that if you're actually material, you're focused on material ends, your materialism should change as things change. That logic should change as things change. We can't be looking at it through the same lens as some, he was kind of elite, white dude, wrote about 140 years ago. Some of his ideas are great, but some of them don't apply to today. I agree with you.
Right. Anyway, thank you again for coming on, guys. I'll go follow Zeynab. I'm going to call you Zeynab, actually. What? Free Palestine. Yes, absolutely. And we'll coordinate something again. So again, thank you. I had a great time. It was wonderful talking to you.
You too.
Yeah. All right, everybody. I'm going to take a quick break after this, and like a 5-minute break. And then I will see you all on Rumble. If you are not already following me on Rumble, please go follow me on Rumble. If you are not already, and I'm going to be moving the stream over there. Thanks everybody for joining. If you're not going to come over to Rumble, thanks everybody for being on here. It was great. And if you have any questions about that stream or about anything we talked about, you can ask when we switch over to Rumble. So BRB, and I will see you guys in like 5 minutes. I basically just need to pee. And yeah, see you in a minute.